As always, I will start with a little bit of a brief presentation to talk about what we are doing today, and then we'll move into the demo. There we go. So as I mentioned, today is the second session in our Creating Professional Templates in Word series. There's three sessions that make up the series. Today is all about layout and navigation. So last week we looked at styles and structure. Today is layout and navigation, and then 2 weeks time for our next session we are going to be looking at visuals and graphics, and the image there is an example of the sort of thing that we're hoping to end up with at the end of those 3 sessions, and you'll see what we've got so far in a moment. The idea of these 3 sessions is to help you feel confident creating your own branded template within Word if that's something you're looking to do. But also we include tips in the session that even if you're not going to be creating or using a template, they'll just help you with kind of day-to-day document work and formatting. So last week, or not last week, last session, what we covered was the general structure of our template, so what we were looking to include, so things like we knew that we wanted a cover page, we know that we wanted a table of contents, and then we wanted the main content within the template, so maybe some placeholders, maybe some sample text for people to work with. We covered the page setup, so we looked at things like the orientation of the page, the size of the page, and the margins, make sure those were all correct before we started adding anything in. We saved the document as a template, so we'll see that saved template in a moment, and we saved it as a template so that we can then continue to edit that template, and if someone was to start using that template, they wouldn't overwrite the template itself. It would open as a new file and they would be forced to save that as a new document. We then created 3 heading styles, so you can see that in the image on the left side. We created a main heading, we created a subheading, and we created a topic heading. So we covered how to create each of those and how to apply each of those, and we left those within the template so that users who open the template would be able to clearly see which headings are available and they can use whichever ones they need. We also created a multi-level list style. I don't have an image of that here, but you'll see it in a minute when we open our template, for users that are going to be using that template and want a multi-level list style. So, you know, where you have your 1, 1.1, 1.1.1. So we looked at how to set up a multi-level list style, how to set up the indents, the numbering, the formatting, and so on. Like I said, all of that, if you're interested in going back, if you missed that webinar, that recording is available on our YouTube page. I'll share the link at the end of the session. So what are we going to do next? What's the next steps for our template? We are looking at the structure and the layout of our template today. And a really big topic that we're going to discuss is the use of section breaks. It is highly unlikely that if you're creating a template, you wouldn't use section breaks, because section breaks are used to add or amend formatting throughout a document, and we'll talk about some examples in a moment. So we're going to look into how we create those, how we can remove them, and the importance of using them. One of the reasons that we use section breaks is to create different headers and footers throughout our document. So that might be something as simple as I want the page numbering to start on page 3, or it might be something a little bit more complex, like maybe you're going to have sections in your template. So this first section is going to have a particular topic heading, and we want that topic heading in the header, and then a few pages later it'll be another topic, so then we want a different heading and maybe a different formatting in that header or footer. So we'll look at how that works as well. We're also going to cover the table of contents in this session too. So not just creating a basic table of contents, but actually going in and setting up a fully functioning formatted table of contents so that anyone using your template, all they'll have to do is update it. When they edit the document, they won't ever have to go in and change any of those options. So a little bit about section breaks. You may have seen or heard of them before. Essentially, section breaks allow different formatting excuse me, to be applied to different parts of a document. So if any of these bullet points that I've got on the left side are changing throughout your document, you will be using section breaks. So like I mentioned, if you wanted different headers or footers throughout your document, if you wanted different page numbering in your document, so if you wanted the page numbering to start at a particular page, or if you wanted the numbering itself to restart at a particular point. Page orientation, so for example, if you wanted a single landscape page in the middle of your template and all the other pages are portrait, you would need section breaks. And also if the margins are changing, that one isn't quite as common, but it might be that you perhaps for some reason want some larger margins or smaller margins on a particular page, and again we would insert a section break. All of those section breaks, and we'll cover this in the demo in a moment, are in the layout tab within Word, and we can click on the breaks button, and then we have our section breaks down here. There are other types of breaks as well, so we have already discussed a page break. So a page break will simply move us to the next page, but it won't change the section. It won't create a new section. It's still going to be part of the same section, so any formatting, headers and footers, etc. will still be the same, because all in the same section. We do have something called a column break, which I believe we're talking about next week, because we're going to briefly look at setting up columns. Text wrapping, we're not going to worry about, but we have all of these different section breaks down here. So we're going to use a couple of those today. We're going to use a next page section break and I believe we're going to use a continuous section break as well. The next page section break, a bit like a page break, it moves you to the next page, but it is going to start a new section. A continuous section break, we would use that if we don't want to move to the next page, but we do want to start a new section. So it will just start a new section in the middle of that page, wherever our cursor is. Not going to move us to the next page, but we know that we're moving on to the next section. The two at the bottom are less commonly used. Excuse me, the two at the bottom are less commonly used. These ones, as an even page, will insert a section break and it will move you to the next even page within the document. Odd page, insert section break, and moves the next section to the next odd numbered page. The example I normally give for those two, because it's kind of hard to think when would I ever use that, the example I tend to give for those two is if you imagine like a book, like a printed book, and perhaps you always wanted to start the next chapter on an even page. So you get to the end of the chapter and then you say, right, I want to go to the next even page, and then I would start my next chapter. So that's the example I normally give, but they're not obviously not as commonly used. Really important, only add a section break where it's needed, particularly in a template that's going to be used by lots of people. So I've seen examples before where, you know, people have created these amazingly, wonderfully formatted templates and they look brilliant. But because of the number of section breaks they have in them, when they distribute those and send them out to users to look at and to use, users sometimes struggle because a lot of end users aren't used to using section breaks. They're not sure what they are. They're very easy to accidentally delete. And obviously if you accidentally delete one, it's going to throw off your headers, your footers, you know, and so on. So the first thing is only use it if it's really needed. Try not to have too many in there if you can help it. And also, as part of kind of the end user training, which I think we'll discuss more next week, if you have got section breaks, make sure that when you are making people aware of the template, just give them a little bit of information about those section breaks, why they're important, what they do, how to see them, how to see where they are, and if you accidentally delete them, how to put them back in, and how to be aware that you know you've accidentally deleted one or moved one. So do have to be careful with them. Okay, so let's have a look at our template. So what I'm going to do is I've just got my Word template here. I'm just going to right click and open. So remember when we saved it as a template last week, right click open will allow us to open the template itself and make changes to that template. Whereas if I double clicked on the template, it would open it as a new document, document 1. And if I made any changes, it wouldn't be saving those to the template itself. It would force me to save it as a new file. So we right click open to work on our template. So this is what we created last week, and we've got space for our cover page, which we will look at in the next webinar. We have a page for our table of contents, which we'll do later today. Then we have, like I said, our 3 headings that we created, our heading styles, which are also available up here in our styles area. I've just put in some sample text. And then on the next page, we have our multi-level list styles, which are also available at the top here for users to utilize. So the first thing I'll do is I'll just show you how to view breaks within a document. On the Home tab, we're going to use this paragraph icon just here in our paragraph group. Clicking that turns on things like our paragraph marks, so we can see where we've pressed enter at the end of the line, it creates a new paragraph, but it also allows us to see any breaks that we have, so section breaks or page breaks. So in the last webinar, we set up a page break here, and we also set up a page break here. We always use page breaks or next page section breaks if we want to move to the next page. We would never click and just press enter, 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 enter to move something down, because if we inserted any text before that, it would continue to move the text below it further down, and you scroll to the next page and you'd end up with text halfway down the next page. So we'd always use those page breaks or next page section breaks. Now, the changes that I want to make is, the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that we have headers and footers starting on page 3. This is my main content on page 3. So my headers and footers, I don't want them to appear on a cover page. I don't want them to appear on a table of contents. I want them to start in here, and I also want the page numbering to start at 1 on this page, even though it's obviously page 3. So because I want this page 3 to be different, this will be the start of my section. So what I'm going to do is I am going to delete this page break, because we're going to replace it with a next page section break. So I'm just going to click before it, just press delete. Okay, it's that easy to delete. As I talked about earlier, how easy it is to accidentally delete these breaks, particularly if you hadn't had that on and you didn't know it was there, and you just press delete and you have end users saying everything's just moved up and I don't know why, and then they end up doing that, which, like I said, we don't want to do. So we do need to be careful. So I'll come into the layout tab, I'll go to breaks, and we want a next page section break because we want to start a new section and we want it to start on the next page. Okay, so we can see that now we've got our section break next page. I've just got an additional paragraph there, so I'll just press delete just so that's at the top of the page, and then we've got that in the new section. Section break, next page section breaks is also how we would create a single page of a different orientation. So I'll quickly show you how to do that one, how to create a different page, or a single page that's landscape rather than portrait. So what I do is I've got my section break here. I've then got this page. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert another section break. So we just clicked before it, breaks, next page section break. So what I have now is the first page, and the start of this page is section 1. After this section break is section 2, and then after the next section break is section 3. Okay, if I click before this section break, so I've clicked within the second section, and I change the orientation to landscape. Sometimes it just takes a minute to sort itself out. Hopefully it won't freeze. What we should have, there we go, is we have our portrait pages, we have our landscape page, and then because after that page we're moving on to the next section, it goes back to portrait again. Okay, so that's, if you needed it, that's how you would insert a page of a different orientation. Let me just undo that. We'll go back to where it was. Okay, perfect. So back to where we was, we've just got a single section break, our section 1, and then starting on this page, we have our section 2. Now to edit our headers and footers, I can just double click within the header or footer area. So I'm just going to double click in this space up here, and we can now see it's opened up that header and footer tab within the ribbon. I'm also going to turn off my paragraph marks, but I don't really need those for the moment. There we go. Okay. What's important now that we've opened this header in our footer as well is we can actually see the section that we are currently working on. So this header is in our section 2. If I scroll back, this header is in section 1, and this header is in section 1 as well. Okay, so we can see the impact that that section break has had, and it's making it very clear which section each of the headers is in. It's the same with the footers, yeah, footer section 1, footer section 2, and so on. And obviously after this page is still going to be section 2, okay, because I haven't used another section break. So it's going to continue section 2 for the remainder of the document. Obviously, if I wanted additional sections, absolutely, I could have another section break and have a section 3, section 4, and so on. Now, if I'm in this header here, let's say I just want to put in KISS technology in the top left corner. So I'll type in KISS technology. If I scroll up, you'll notice that even though my headers are in a different section, it's still applied that text to all of the headers in my document in section 1 and in section 2. And the reason for that is because I have this link to previous turned on, and it's turned on by default. And you'll see when I hover over it, it says link to the previous section to continue using the same header or footer. Turn this feature off to create a different header or footer for the current section. Okay, so because that's turned on, it means that those headers are going to be the same, which I don't want. So I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to turn that off. This time, when I type it in, because I've got that link to previous turned off, it's not added that header to the previous section. And likewise, I could go into this one and add in a custom header in there if I wanted to, and it would be different because it's in a different section. We can also use these navigation tools, so I keep scrolling up and down, but an easier way of navigating is to use these previous and next buttons, and that will allow you to move to the header in the previous section or in the next section. So that's a nice quick way of moving between them. Also, we have the option to go to footer, which takes you to the footer of that page, and go to header, which takes you to the header of that page. So a few nice quick navigation links in there, particularly if you have multiple kind of 3, 4, 5 sections in your document and you want to quickly go between them. While we're here, we're going to discuss a little bit about how we would set up a really kind of well formatted header and footer. So we can make sure, again, that this is something, if someone's coming in and using the template, they're not going to have to worry about at all. It's all set up for them and they shouldn't have any issues. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have, just looking at what I want over here, I want to have today's, or have KISS technology, and then perhaps underneath I'll have today's date. I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller than the main document, so I'm just going to use my font. If you wanted to, you could set it up as a style, but I'm applying it to so little text, it doesn't really matter. Actually, I'll leave it where it is, and then I want to insert today's date. Now, in our header and footer options, there are some pre-built, or some built-in headers and footers. So we've got blank option. We've got one that's set up in 3 columns so that you don't really have to worry about the alignment, which we'll talk about in a moment. We've got some more graphic options, and we've got pre-built footers as well with page numbers and things. We're not going to use any of those because I would rather set it up myself and rather have that full control. To insert the date, I have this date and time option just here. And I can choose the format that I want. So let's just go for that top one. I can also choose whether I want that date and time to update automatically. So if I turn that off, every time someone uses this template, it would say 18th of March. But if I turn on update automatically, it just means it will always show today's date. So let's do that one. It's obviously a lot more useful, and we've got that in there. I'm also just going back to what we looked at last week with our kind of paragraph formatting. I'm just going to remove a bit of the space between these two because I don't really like that it's so spread out. Let's just make that a little bit smaller as well. So it's the same size, and I'm just going to remove my, there we go, move some of the spacing in there. To this one. That's fine. Okay, perfect. I'm just checking that we haven't. Oh, there we go. I've just come into my paragraph options. I've just popped open. We looked at this last week when we looked at the styles. I'm just going to turn off that spacing before the paragraph. It's personal preference, isn't it? I don't like big gaps between things, particularly in a header. I think it should be quite compact. Perfect. So we've got that one on there. I think what we'll probably do in the next webinar, in the graphics webinar, we'll add like a little line underneath or something just to separate it. But we'll just look at the text today. There are other kind of automated fields that you can insert into your header and footer, so not just the date. We've got document information, so you could automatically insert the author of the document, the file name, the file path, document title. There's additional properties as well. Obviously this relies on you actually having added this property to the document, and if you're looking for something that's completely different, you can go into field, and again there's lots and lots of different fields that you can insert. There's others also available under quick parts as well, so it's lots of options. And pictures, so we'll add a logo in the next webinar. Over here on the right side, we do have the options for different first page. So if you are only interested in having a different header or footer on the first page of the document, and the header and footer in the rest of the document is going to be the same, you don't need to set up section breaks unless there's any other formatting that's going to be different. You could just tick different first page, and that will just allow that first page to be different, and any of the other headers will be the same throughout the document. Similar with different odd and even pages. If you just said, look, I want this header to be on all of the odd pages and this header to be on all of the even pages, we can use that option there rather than using our section breaks. Show document text just literally hides sometimes. I don't know why it's not doing it now, but sometimes it just hides that document text underneath. And we also have the margins. So, for example, the header, distance of the header from the top of the document, footer from the bottom. And we'll talk about alignment tabs in a moment. So I'll leave my header as that. And I'm going to go down to my footer. So I'll go to footer. Now in my footer, I want to have the document title. So I'm going to go to document information and we'll put in the document title. That's just going to create a placeholder so that if someone uses the template, it will insert that document title for them. The other thing that I want to have within my footer is the page number. Now, there is a page number button just here, and that does allow you to select where you would want that page number to be. So top of page, bottom of page, page margins. If you select one of these, however, so if I said page plain number 3, for example, it will remove any text that you already have in your footer or in your header if you inserted it at the top. So we try not to use those options unless that's the only thing that we need. What we can do instead is insert an alignment tab. So there we go. When I go to my page number, if I click current position and I insert a page number like this one here, it's just going to squash it next to the text I already have. Excuse me. Now, if I go in and I'm just going to remove that for a minute, I can add it in a minute. It inserts that page number at the current position. Now, what we could do if we wanted it on the right-hand side is use the tab key to move it to the center or move it to the right. And that's using these alignment markers at the top. You can see those very small kind of upside down T and that L. It's aligning that page number with those markers. it is best to use the tab key to move that number along or to get to the position you need to be, rather than pressing the spacebar. If you're pressing the spacebar, you're not aligning exactly, and also it means if that you were to add any additional text on the left side, you can see it's pushing that number along. So eventually the number would get to the end of that line and it would just drop to the next line. Or sometimes you get people that have used spacebar and the numbering looks great 1 to 9, and then when it gets to the number 10, because it's an extra character, the 10 has dropped to the next line. So we wouldn't ever use the spacebar to move that one along. Just undo that. So we can use the tab key. Sometimes it's very easy to remove these, accidentally remove them, because if you click on them and drag them off the ruler, they disappear. And if you don't have those alignments, if you're pressing the tab key, you'll notice it's no longer moving it to the center and to the right. It is just moving it across like a tab distance, like a tab stop, okay? Which again isn't what we want. If you are working on a header or footer and you notice those icons have disappeared, you're pressing the tab key and it's not moving you to the center or to the right, we can actually insert our own alignment tab. This is going to place those back into the header or footer for us. So I've clicked Insert Alignment tab. We can then choose where we want to insert that alignment marker. Do we want to insert it in the center, or do we want to insert it on the right? I want to insert it on the right side. That's where I want my page number to be. You can also select something called a leader. So for example, if I selected dots, it would mean that I would, between here and that marker, it would just type a series of dots, a bit like when you have a table of contents and you have the name of the section or the title, and then you have the dots and the page number. It would look very similar. I don't want that, so I'll click None. And that's moved that over to the right hand side. I can now insert anything else that I want to. So I think I had my document title. And notice how if I'm inserting something here or I'm typing in here, because I've used that alignment tab, it's not going to be pushing that page number along, and off the end of the line that page number is going to remain in place. Okay, so make sure when you're inserting something on the right side or in the center, we're using the markers and the tab key. If it's not available, you're creating that alignment tab. And if you're inserting your page number, unless it's the only thing that you need in your footer, we're using current position, because otherwise it's going to remove other things that you might already have within your header or footer. Okay, so what I've got now, we can see it there. So we've got our footer at the bottom, and we've also got our header at the top here. Like I said, in the graphics webinar, we'll add a logo and a little line and make it look a little bit nicer, but we've got the basic structure within there now. The other thing I want to do, so I'll just close my header and footer. There we go, is insert a table of contents. Now I'm just going to turn on my paragraph marks again for this one, because I want to make sure that I don't accidentally delete my section break. I'm just going to move that down an extra line, and I'm going to insert my table of contents in here. Turn that off again. So I'll go to References, Table of Contents. There are automatic built-in table of contents, which sometimes do the job and are absolutely fine. What you're not going to get with these automatic table of contents is any control over the formatting. So if you wanted something to be bold, or a particular heading to be larger or underlined or in italics, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to have any control over the number of levels you have in a table of contents. So for example, this automatic table at the top here is telling us it's going to include heading 1, heading 2 and heading 3. So if you wanted it only to show heading 1, for example, and not the other 2 levels, you're not going to be able to do that. And also, you're not going to have any control over the styles that are going to be included within that table of contents. So if you've created these custom styles within your template, and you want to make sure that if someone uses one of those custom styles, that heading is inserted into the table of contents, again, it's not going to let you do that. So it's highly likely that you're going to need to create a custom table of contents. There we go. So this takes me into kind of my basic setup of the table of contents. So we've got the first few options. Do we want to show the page numbers? Yes. We want to right align them? Yes. And that tab leader, a bit like on our footer that I mentioned a minute ago, you know, what we want between the heading and the page numbering. Underneath, we can change the number of levels shown. So we can say actually just show the first level. And you can see that it's changed the preview up here, and it's only going to include styles that are associated with our level 1 heading. Okay, so because when we created our styles in the previous webinar, our main heading we associated with the level 1 heading, it's kind of including that within that group. So anything formatted as a main heading, level 1 heading, or heading 1 would be included within our table of contents. So if I expand that again, you'll see it's adding in additional styles as well. In the options area, this is where we would go in and select the styles that we want to appear within our table of contents and at which level we want those to appear as well. So the level we would enter into this box on the right hand side. So at the minute, anything formatted as a heading 1 will display as a table of contents level 1, which we can look at the formatting in a moment, but normally means, as you can see in the preview, it will be flush against the margin. There's no additional indent. Anything formatted as heading 2 will have a slight indent. It will appear as level 2, and again heading 3 would be indented further. We have all of the styles in our document listed in here. So any additional styles you've set up, any of your custom styles will be listed here as well. Now I'm just going to go back and check my styles. Okay, so the styles we've got within this document are main heading, they are subheading, and topic heading. So let's say, for example, let's say I wanted to include the main heading and the subheading in my table of contents. So I'd come into my table of contents, come into options, and I'll scroll down. They're all in alphabetical order. The main heading is level 1, and the subheading I'll make sure is level 2. If I wanted to remove one of those from the table of contents, I didn't want it to be shown, I would just delete the number in the box. If I did want it to be shown, but I wanted it to be shown at a different level, I'd insert a different number. So for example, heading 3 would now be shown as a table of contents level 3, so with that additional indent. I'm going to leave it as that. I'm also going to make sure we're only showing those 2 levels. Under the modify option, this is where we would set up our formatting. So all of the levels listed here are the table of contents levels. So anything that I have specified is going to be listed as a table of contents level 1 will be formatted in this way. Anything formatted as a level 2 will look like this. So we've got the preview there, level 3, and so on. Obviously, I'm only using the first 2 levels, so I don't need to worry about the rest of the levels. I can click on the level 1, click modify, and I can then set up the formatting within here. So for example, I might want to make sure that the text is bold and maybe it's a little bit larger. Okay. The basic font options are in there. If you need anything further, you can go to format. There's additional options for things like paragraph formatting, additional font options, and so on. So for example, if you wanted to make sure that, sometimes what I see is the level 1, people want them always to be in capitals, in uppercase. So they turn on that all caps option, so that even if the individual in the document hasn't written that heading in capital letters, it's still going to appear in capitals within the table of contents. So that's quite a common one. But I'm just going to leave it as that. Click OK, and you'll see the preview has changed. And again, for the level 2, I can go in and modify. I can set up the formatting. If it's indents you're looking at, that's going to be under the paragraph option. So we've got the indent there. We can see there's a slight left indent. I'll click OK, and then OK, and then OK, and then we've got it in there. Okay, so what we've pulled through is the main heading. We can see that it's bold. We've pulled through the subheading as well with that indent because it is our level 2. It's also pulled in our multi-level numbered headings as well, our multi-level styles. So because that level 1 heading was again linked with the heading 1 style, and level 2 was linked with the heading 2 style, that's why it's pulled those 2 in. Of course, if I didn't want those, I can go back and I could go into options and I could remove them in here. Okay, let's remove that heading 2 because it's unlikely that we'd want a heading 2 in there. I'll click OK, and then OK, and then OK. There we go. Okay. So obviously you can play around with it however much you want, whatever you want it to look like. It's important to set up those formats within that table of contents settings, because if you set up your formats just on the table of contents itself, so what I mean by that is I say, oh, actually I want this to be italics, or just select it and make it italics like that. When I update my table of contents, sometimes it's not going to do it now. It's kept it for now, but often when you update the table of contents, it removes that formatting, so that italics would disappear. So we always make sure that we're setting up any formatting, any styles, any indents and so on through that table of contents. Okay, so obviously I could also add a little heading that says table of contents at the top there as well, but I won't worry about that for now. So we've got our template so far. So next session, we will look at the cover page. I want to make a really nice cover page, professional cover page, but also incorporate some graphics in there, some placeholders for people to insert the title. We've got our table of contents. In the next webinar, we'll jazz up that header a little bit, just to make it, maybe add a logo in there. And we're also going to look at some graphic options, some table options, and we're also going to cover columns a little bit as well, because sometimes people want templates that maybe for more of like marketing or promotional material, and they want to make sure they've got graphic or they've got space for columns, or whatever it might be, that will just add kind of a little bit more interest onto the page.